Welcome to the 7 steps to exhibition success with Stephen Murtagh, the exhibition guy. In step 4, what we're going to focus on is booth, the booth itself, or stand as it's called in Europe. And we're going to focus on the design and what works and what doesn't work, because it's a critical piece of exhibiting. And what I say that is, there's 3 key elements to successful exhibiting that are involved. First of all, it's your people. Second of all, it's your product. And third of all, it's your stand. Now, or booth, as we call it. So what we're going to focus on, the booth itself and how we design and lay out the booth for maximum effect. And where I begin and why I say booth design matters is when an exhibitor walks down the hall of an exhibition, they decide within 4 seconds if they're going to stop at a person's booth. Now, very often that will come down to the people who are standing, engaging, smiling, open body language. But the booth on itself makes a huge difference. And how it's laid out makes a huge difference to the potential visitor in terms of whether they will stop or not. And that's what we're going to focus on in this particular section, is good and bad booth design. And where we begin, when I talk about this idea of booths and stands, in the US and many countries, they focus on using pipe and drape system, and a lot in Europe tend to use what they call an octanorm system. Whilst the structures effectively are different, the principles are exactly the same. And what we've got to focus on is how do we create maximum effect, be that through pipe and drape, or do that through shell scheme, or if we're doing a free build stand, how we actually do that and why that matters. So where we're going to begin is we're going to focus on the 5 key elements of good booth design. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an example of each. Once I show you this list, I'm going to give you an example of each that will hopefully help you in terms of how you can maximize the good things about exhibiting and the good things about booth design. And the first one we talk about is simplicity. We need to keep our booth simple so that people understand what it is, it's clear and concise, it's comfortable to walk onto, and that they understand what it is you sell. And that's the first message. Secondly, we talk about lighting. I'm going to talk about hero products in a moment and why lighting matters. Thirdly, is the amount of floor space within your booth that needs to be available for visitor access. And we're going to cover that also. Next, we're going to talk about one key message and not confusing our audience. And lastly, we're going to talk about color and how color impacts how people perceive different brands. So if we look at these individually, and we talk of the first idea about simplicity, what we're trying to do is create a space that's open and friendly and as simple, in fact, it would be the word I would use, so that people aren't confused. They know exactly what it is, and they know exactly what the product is or what the business is, and keeping it nice and simple. The more we can do that, the more effective and less clutter in our visitors' heads as they walk down the aisle of an exhibition. So it's really important we focus on simplicity. We don't need to bring everything from our factory or office. Think about what you need to bring. It's really, really important. Secondly, we talk about lighting. If you get an interior designer into your home, the first thing they will talk to you about is lighting and how we should light up our hero product. The hero product is the product that really are focusing on at this particular event. So look at lighting, and if you have to cut costs on anything that you're doing, lighting would be the last thing I would cut. It's critically important in your booth design, be that for a small booth or for a large booth, each is equally important. The next thing we focus on, really important, is floor space and making it comfortable for our visitors to walk onto our booth. Now, before COVID, there was a statistic in the exhibition industry that suggested you should have 60% of your floor space should be free for visitor access. In other words, to make it comfortable for them to walk on the stand or the booth. And that hasn't changed. If anything's post-COVID, that's probably in more than 60%. So think about what exactly you're bringing and how comfortable it is for your potential visitors to walk onto your booth. Next, we talk about messaging and having one clear message. There's a theory in exhibition terms that your graphics should be readable and visible from 15 to 20 feet away from your booth. so that people understand what it is you do and what message you're promoting. And that's really, really important, because there's a lot of people will get their graphics and they'll put lots of pictures and lots of phone numbers and lots of websites and all the different things on your graphic. The reality is people won't read them. So what we got to focus on, what is the one clear message that we want to get across at this particular trade show that's going to make people want to stop at our booth? And the last area we focus on is color. Now, if you go onto Google and put in color in business, there's a huge amount of content about what color says about your brand. Now, it may come as no surprise, but the top 10 companies, consumer companies in the world, have red in their logo because they're trying to create that urgency of, oh, we want you to buy. Now, if you look at blue as a color, blue is seen as a very loyal color, regal color, a very solid business. If you look at yellow, it's more about fun. You talk about green, it's more about eco. But think about the colors you're using. And don't be afraid to use bold colors. What we're trying to do is we're trying to grab people's attention when they're at the trade show. When they're walking down towards your booth and it's very colorful. Now, this can be done very effectively through pipe and drape, through different types of drape color. And so we're not limited using pipe or drape or shell scheme, as it's called in Europe, to create an impact. Very often I work with companies who take smaller booths and they say to me, oh, I can't create an impact. I totally disagree. It doesn't matter what size your booth is. You can create an impact through pipe and drape, shell scheme, whether it's 3 meters, 10 meters, 5 meters, 25 meters. It makes absolutely no difference. It's about what you as a business are putting out there between your people, your product, and your stand. Now, as with all good things, we talk about what makes up bad stand design or bad booth design. And this is a really critical piece, because if we look at the 4 key areas or the common traits of bad booth design, there is a consistency. The first one is clutter. Having lots of products on your booth. You don't need to do it. Bring your hero product. Bring maybe some other products. Bring the products you're really trying to promote. But we've got to create a certain level of mystery with our clients, that they want that little bit more. And maybe that'll entice them into our showroom or factory or office, whatever that might be. But it's not necessary to bring every single thing from your factory to the trade show. Secondly, talk about the unfinished stand. I'm going to show you an example of that in just a moment. Thirdly, we talk about the obstacle course, making it awkward for our clients to walk onto our booth. And lastly, we talk about TMI, too much information. So just going to give you an example of each of those as a key highlighter of what not to do in terms of designing your booth. So when we look at them and we talk about clutter, I'm going to give you an example of a stand at a European show, which was 3 meters by 2 meters, about 10 feet by 6 feet. And in this example, they have 3 chairs, 2 counters, and what you can't see off the picture is there was a big planter on the right-hand side. It leaves no room for people to walk onto the booth. And also, if you use counters on your booth, you're creating a psychological barrier at the front of your booth. We're trying to make it open so people will walk on and we can engage with them and have those really meaningful conversations. We're not trying to put a block there in front of it. So keep away from having too much on your booth. Secondly, talk about the unfinished stand or booth. And in this example that I have of the booth, this is the opening day. In fact, the show is now open here on the left-hand side. The gentleman on the right-hand side is the owner of the company, and on the left-hand side, you have buyers. His booth isn't finished. He's stressed, he's panicked, and that's completely understandable. But the people who are walking through the door of the trade show first are the people who probably have the most genuine interest in the products that are on show at the exhibition. So what I would say to you is ensure and make sure that you have your booth completed 2 to 3 hours before the show opens. This also gives you time to maybe go get a coffee, get your head together about and focus on the day ahead, the opportunities of the day ahead. The unfinished booth sends a really bad signal about your business, that you're not prepared. And it's really important that we put our best foot forward when we're exhibiting at a trade show. And then we talk about the obstacle course, about having too many freestanding products on our booth. The key for me is to avoid the trip hazards, avoid something that might make people feel uncomfortable. For example, with this particular example, maybe if this was your company, you could hang those freestanding units off the top of the booth. Now, that's obviously more applicable in a shell scheme situation, but what I would say to you as regard pipe and drape, you're obviously trying to push as much of this towards the back of the booth as possible, so that it doesn't represent or present a trip hazard for your potential visitor. And in this day and age, it's really important because we want to make people feel comfortable, because they're more likely to engage when they feel comfortable, and they're more likely to stop when they see that a booth is comfortable. So it's really important we don't focus on creating and producing too many obstacles for our booth. And lastly, we talk about too much information. And I'm just going to give you a quick example here. Really, really good company. But one thing I would highlight, on the graphics that are used on this particular booth, there's lots of text and lots of pictures. And I do appreciate that these graphics are valuable real estate. But it's important that we get across our key message in a very concise way. I would also say, if anyone is using graphics like this, full-size graphics, to be aware that the top 1/3 of the graphic, or even maybe the top half of the graphic, is the most important part of that real estate, because that's the piece that people see. The bottom section is far, far less important, because you may be standing in front of us, or you may have a counter there. Let's maximize our graphics, because that's what works. And to come back to something I said a few moments ago, which is really relevant, to finish and give you the tip on booth design. Less really is more. Keep 60% of your floor space free for visitor access, and that will make it more comfortable for your visitors to stop on your booth. And your graphics should be readable and visible from 15 to 20 feet away, and have simple messaging that's going to be really effective and make people understand what it is and why they should stop at your booth. Really hope that's of some help, and I look forward to seeing you on step 5. It's Stephen Murtagh, the exhibition guy.